the meeting going. We'd like to ask people to turn their cell phones off so we can hear testimony. I'd like to announce that Senate Bill 1267 has been pulled from today's hearing, the request of the author. So we're now down to 3 measures for today, so we'll get right into it. We will operate, at some point we'll have a quorum. We need 1 more member, so we'll start with SB 1018. We have Senator Lou ready, willing, and able to present her bill. And I will turn the floor over to Senator Carol Lou. Carol, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. SB 1018 is a district bill concerning the State Route 710 North project, which is a long and storied past. The intent is to bring more transparency and clarity to a process that has been murky at best. Let me summarize what the bill does do and does not do. The draft EIS prepared for the 710 North project was released in March of 2015, and a cost-benefit analysis on the project alternative was released in June of that year. The comment period for both ended in August 5th, 2015. SB 1018 directs Metro, LA Metro, over a 90-day period, to conduct hearings and provide an opportunity for written comment on the cost-benefit analysis for State Route 710 North project. This should not delay completion of the final EIS, which is expected to be done in mid-2017 at the earliest. This bill does not set a precedent of requiring cost-benefit analysis to be conducted under CEQA. CEQA is no longer referenced in the SB 1018 as amended. Nonetheless, based on testimony presented to the Environmental Quality Committee, I understand Caltrans and Metro now, for the purposes of this project, consider the cost-benefit analysis to be part of the EIR. The problem then is that the cost-benefit analysis was not subject to a public hearing as the draft EIS was, nor to the same length of comment period. SB 1018 reconciles these differences. Members, the public is trying to participate in a public review of a very technical analysis of a very controversial project and a highly confusing process. It's still not clear which agency is the lead agency and who will be making the final decision on a preferred alternative. SB 1018 is an attempt to clarify at least the substantive basis upon which that decision will be made. I ask you for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator. We have a quorum. Can we call the roll, please?
Senator Bell?
Here.
Bell, present. Cannella? Allen? Here. Allen, present. Bates? Gaines? Gaines, present. Galgiani? Leyva? Here. Leyva, present. McGuire? Here. McGuire, present. Mendoza? Roth? Here. Roth, present. Wachowski?
Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you. Can we have witnesses for the bill, please? Witnesses in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. David Jones, on behalf of the City of Glendale, we would concur and thank the author for presenting this district bill. We think that the bill, it really is about the process and being more inclusive of all the comments and giving standing to the voices that were made on that, the cost-benefit analysis. We think a more robust review, which will enhance the final product, and we would ask for an aye vote on this very important bill. Thank you.
Kirk Blackburn of Ellison Wilson Advocacy on behalf of the City of La Cañada Flint Ridge in support. SB 1018 ensures a more transparent process by providing the public with a full opportunity to review and weigh in on the cost-benefit analysis. It also guarantees that its input is carefully considered and responded to. Thank you.
Other witnesses in favor, please? Okay, we have witnesses not in favor of this. Come forward, please.
Question for the
Yes, Senator Allen has a question.
So we've all worked on projects in and around our areas that go through the EIR process. I mean, the EIR process and CEQA process in general allow for, and NEPA as well, which I think you had to go through here, there's a lot of public input associated with that. I know personally, having seen it on many projects, and I just want to get a better sense of why, your sense of why more is needed beyond what's already been done through the regular process that everyone else goes through.
My understanding is that there was no public hearing specifically on the CBA, and this ensures that there's at least 3 hearings on the matter.
Okay, witnesses opposed.
But there's still lots of public, I mean, that's one aspect of the project.
Right, but it's a very critical aspect of the project, that lack of public input in the hearing process for that element. We think that will make this a more robust, full discussion of that element, and that having not been part of the original discussion, we think adding this public comment period will end up with a more transparent, better record for us.
So what's your sense of what's been missing in the discussion so far here? I mean, this has been going on since the 50s, right?
Before, actually, but I think that what's missing is the gray area of the cost-benefit analysis and where it stands, what standing it has in the process. So by the fact that it wasn't in the original, it was gray as to whether it was going to be included, the comments that were made upon that.
I understand that's a very proceduralist answer.
Yes.
I mean, give me something more tangible that would be meaningful to a person on the street. I mean, the cost-benefit analysis is interesting as a matter of discussion, but tell me why you're here. What's the real story here?
Well, I think our view is my client made comments on the cost-benefit analysis and saying that there are routes that were going to be looked at, and those are going to be weighed. And so having that input that they gave very carefully to the process, having that not given the full consideration of a public hearing, they think that they're disadvantaged by this, and this bill will level the playing field and allow their comments that they made, the C3 cities that made comments on it.
There's never been a public hearing that the Metro Board or other deciding agency has held on this project that hasn't incorporated any of the discussions about the cost-benefit analysis?
That's my understanding.
So when you submitted the letter, for example, that wasn't part of the discussion? Nobody came before them and spoke about it, or the board?
I think as I mentioned, it was not part of the original EIR process. So it kind of came as outside of it. And so this puts that component fully in the process.
Why wasn't it part of why wasn't it part of the original process?
I would defer to Metro.
I'm sorry for asking all these questions, but I'm just, I think every single person in this room has gone through a lengthy CEQA process, and we all know how intense it can get and how many opportunities there are for people to weigh in. And I'm just, I'm trying to get a sense of how real, whether this is just another barrier that folks are trying to throw up, or if this is if there's something real beyond a purely proceduralist argument, which I'm a lawyer, I love procedure, I love process, but I want to get to the meat of this. If we're being asked to, to basically rearrange the deck chair a little bit on a CEQA process that's been in place for a long, long time.
Okay, a question. However, I'll turn it over to the opposition to present their opposition arguments, and perhaps during that you can answer Senator Allen's question. Okay, so why don't you present your opposition to the bill, and so we can hear the full reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Michael Turner on behalf of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. And first this is a state highway. As we are frequently reminded in this building, Metro does not own the state highway system. The state owns the highway system. So the state will make the decisions about the choosing the project in the environmental document. The state is the lead in the environmental process. Our role is as the funding agency for the project. So this is clearly an expensive project, and I think we're all aware of the challenges we face with state transportation funding. So if there's going to be any advancement on the resolution of the project, it's going to take an agency to provide the funding, somebody like our agency. So we thought it would be appropriate in this process, given the questions that were asked about the project, the value of the project and so on, that a cost-benefit analysis would be appropriate. One could argue that CEQA inherently involves a cost-benefit analysis, but our board took the initiative to ask that a cost-benefit analysis be prepared. It is not required, but if it's required, if it is done, it is supposed to be incorporated into the environmental document. There were problems in the documentation between our agency and Caltrans where it was not clear that this was supposed to be in the environmental process. That has since been corrected. Caltrans has determined that the CBA is a part of the environmental document, and that has been clarified, so that's resolved. We have always said that we are going to respond to comments on the CBA. We actually had more hearings in the environmental hearing process for this was actually extended, so we went beyond the minimum requirement for the environmental document. Admittedly, the cost-benefit analysis was not released at the same time as the IR. We all know that, but the process is still there, and the process continues. I would note that this is one of 24 supporting documents to the environmental process, and so it feels like we've gone from first saying incorporate the CBA into the environmental document to now saying, no, wait a minute, treat it separately, have a separate hearing process. So that feels like a change in the rules in the midst of a CEQA process, and that's one of our points of opposition. To first say that the CBA should be a part of the environmental document, but then say treat it separately, have a separate hearing process, feels like it's introducing not necessarily additional time, because of course that time frame could run concurrently, but it's at least 6 months of extra hearings. You have to create a process that creates risk. There could be litigation. So I understand the argument's not necessarily the additional time that might come from something like this, but we've incorporated it into CBA, into the environmental document. Now it looks like we're taking it out and having a separate process for that. Why wouldn't we have a separate process for the traffic study, the air quality studies? There's some questions about that. We would argue that there is maybe not a precedent, but a risk here. If an agency like ours takes a step out to do an additional analysis on a project, and this is the result we get, it's going to be less likely that we're going to do something like this on a future project. We have a number of corridors that we are studying in the environmental process right now. We have contention around a number of them. This is the only one that's subject to a bill, an independent bill. And that's, to us, a problem, maybe not a precedent, but it's a risk. And it's an additional risk into a process that is already challenging enough. And we're the funding agency. Like I said, we're trying to be an entity that helps bring some consensus to what has been a 50-year intractable problem. We've been able to move this ball forward a little bit. We don't have a resolution. We're hoping to get to resolution. Admittedly, we've not had a perfect process, but we've corrected the things that we think were the initial impetus for this bill, the initial source of the bill. Now it just feels like we're changing the rules a little bit once we've done that. That's our source of our opposition.
Other witnesses, please. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair and committee members, my name is Steve Placido. I'm the Vice Mayor of the City of Alhambra, and I'm here to oppose SB 1018. The City of Alhambra and the 710 Coalition have been longtime advocates for completion of the 710 gap because of the congestion that we experience every single day, as people make over 80,000 trips on our local street system. For more than 6 decades, the state, by not finishing the last piece of the LA freeway system, has exposed our school children and our communities to experience higher than necessary air pollution caused by day and night bumper-to-bumper traffic in portions of the San Gabriel Valley that we call home. Over 20 local governments have passed resolutions in support of the GAP's completion, which Caltrans and LA Metro are now studying. Specifically, these cities support the construction of a tunnel. While most of these cities are in the San Gabriel Valley, there are cities like Huntington Park and Southeast Los Angeles that support the project. This is the first time in over 60 years that Caltrans and LA Metro are close to finding a viable transportation solution that will relieve congestion in the San Gabriel Valley and the entire Los Angeles region. The 710 North study is funded by Measure R, which was passed by 2/3 of the Los Angeles County voters in 2008, mandating transportation upgrades throughout the county. The EIR has now been ongoing for over 6 years at a cost of $40 million. This legislation is unnecessary and yet another attempt by a small group of cities to stop any work that would allow for the construction of the 710 tunnel. Several of your colleagues in the state Senate are in support of building the 710 tunnel because of the health and air quality benefits as identified in the environmental work that would benefit the greater Los Angeles area. I respectfully ask for a no vote.
Thank you, sir. Other witnesses, please?
Mr. Chair, members, Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. But definitely agree. I think with respectful opposition to the author, this is a very heavily scrutinized project. I mean, since the 1950s, probably has had the most public participation of any project that we know here in the Capitol. Certainly since I started at the building trades, we've been talking about the 710. It was identified in the Measure R initiative that was passed by the voters. That's also, I think, something that we should note. Many local governments have already addressed the 710, have been supportive. Again, with the EIR and the 6 years of public comments there, I think it's very important to note that in that public comment also comes with a commitment from LA Metro to continue to address and respond to the public with any concerns regarding the CBA. This does change the rules for the project, unfortunately, at a late game. And I think with the commitment that was made by LA Metro, this bill does seem unnecessary. And I think for those reasons, we urge your opposition because it does set a bad precedent for other projects that could be pending as we are debating transportation financing in this legislature. So respectfully urge your opposition. Thank you.
Other witnesses not in favor of this item, please come forward. Please, yes, sir. Have a seat.
Mr. Chair, members, Joe Cruz on behalf of State Council of Laborers. I apologize for being late and rushing, and with all due respect to the member, we oppose this bill. I think for the reasons stated by Mr. Diaz, sort of changing the rules in the last, sort of the fourth quarter of the game, and would have some negative connotations on the project, not just this one, but the precedent it sets for future projects as well. Appreciate no vote.
Is there any way, question for me, is there any way that you guys can patch together 3 hearings and have 3 hearings for Senator Lieu and maybe these communities to discuss this report so that people at least feel like they're being listened to there? Even though that I see a lot of people are supporting the project. As you know, I built a lot of stuff and highways, 14-mile highway, we had 300 public hearings, almost until the day it was, the ribbon was cut. Working out little issues, problems, concerns. It's part of the whole process, as you know. You probably have done the same. So the question I would have is, the Senator wants some hearings on this. Is that something that you guys can pull together? That'd be a question.
I think we'd have to talk to the board. I would have to go back and talk to our board about it. I think we do not have a problem with transparency under the
Hearings all the time.
Yeah, and that's not a problem. So I would have to talk to the board about how we would do that in a way that maintains the integrity of the environmental process. I think that's one thing we would be concerned about. I would anticipate that there would be significant opportunities for public comment on the entirety of the process going forward. However, we are in the middle of an environmental process which has legal constraints. So I would commit to going back to our board and talking about how we could find a way to incorporate additional public comment into this process. I would say, though, that if it's mandated through legislation, that would be a problem for us, because there's this question of a risk and a
We
precedent.
don't have legislation yet, so.
Yet.
Yeah, well, we haven't. So my understanding, Senator Liu, is that you have segregated the issue of CEQA from this bill. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
And I want to know, is that for, so you're basically, all you're really asking is for a hearing on these cost-benefit
Correct.
reports, correct?
Correct.
So the question for you is, there's no procedure for reviewing cost-benefit reports. You could set up your own procedure. Is that something that could be done? It has nothing to do with CEQA now, according to our senator.
Well, I think it would be hard. I would just say I'd have to go back and talk to the board. I think the challenge is that since we have incorporated the CBA into the environmental document, actually at the impetus of the original version of the legislation, it would be very difficult to take it out and now treat it separately. So that's where my hesitation is coming from. I mean, even though the bill doesn't necessarily reference CEQA, the previous version did ask us to do that, which we've done. So now it is actually a part of the environmental document. So I think I would want to just go back and talk to our board, talk to our attorneys, Caltrans attorneys, and see if we could figure out a way to create more opportunities to comment without necessarily messing up that particular issue in the process.
Oh, then the question for Senator is does that sound reasonable, Senator Liu?
We've had a
They're concerned
long-standing
about their
relationship
CEQA document
with
being
Metro.
spoiled.
What we're trying to do is, because it's been a very contentious, whatever plan that will be decided, it's going to be contentious. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we have covered all the little bases, that people have had an opportunity to speak their minds about everything. And we're trying to avoid another legal fight that might result in another 50 years on this particular project. So we're just trying to make sure that whatever we need to do is done, so there'll be no discussion at the end about whatever the outcome is on the project.
All right. Senator Gaines, you had a question? Senator?
Yeah, I did. Appreciate your questions, Senator Bell. And
Trying to mediate some
yes, I understand that. I'm just trying
mutual agreed upon agreement. That's what I'm trying to do.
trying to see if there, maybe you could provide a little clarity, if I could just
Sure.
ask a question in terms of, because I think Senator Bell hit the nail on the head in terms of your CEQA document, right? And any testimony taken then could have an adverse effect that could be precedent setting. At least that's my understanding. And so can you kind of go through that again? I mean, if there were, let's say the legislation did not move forward and you agreed to have additional public hearings, could that jeopardize the project?
Is the CEQA document closed?
No,
No.
Okay.
no, it's not. No, I don't think that in and of itself would jeopardize the project. But I think we're almost in the same spot. I mean, to the extent that we each want transparency and openness and trying to ensure that people have an opportunity to comment on this document, we want to do that. The only hesitation you're hearing from me just relates to needing to check with our board, number one, and then two, making sure it works within the environmental process that we have ongoing. So I think it's entirely possible to find a way to accomplish what it is the senator is trying to accomplish in this process. The only hesitation you're hearing from me at this point is just for those two issues.
Okay, just from my perspective, this thing has been so drawn out and gone for such a long time, and there's already been a vote of the people. There's already been $40 million spent. I believe in infrastructure. I think it provides good jobs. So I could not support the legislation, but maybe if there's an issue of transparency or communication with constituents, maybe hearings could move forward so there was clarity without moving forward the legislation. Just a thought, but I think you're trying to address issues of cities in your district, but I'm worried about if this bill moves forward that you shut the project down, or at least you delay it significantly for something that's been going on for decades. It's already gone to a vote.
That's not the intent of this legislation.
This way?
It's not the intent of this legislation. This legislation does not, we're just talking about the cost-benefit analysis. We're not talking about delaying the results of the EIR, EIS period. We can run public hearings the same time that they're going through this process. Their process will not end until perhaps the middle of next year, or even early 2018. So we don't see a 90-day period or 1 or 2 or 3 meetings with the public to be a hindrance to the process.
Okay. And my concern would be a precedent-setting issue that could affect all projects in the state in the future.
Well, we took out the CEQA part of it, so it will not be precedent-setting.
It is an urgency bill. Senator Leyva?
So if I'm hearing correctly, Senator Liu, the project can move forward. You just want to have these hearings as well? So what is the point of the hearings if the project's going to go ahead and continue?
No, we're talking about the EIR, EIS, the results. I mean, those studies, that process is still going forward, but we want to have a hearing, or up to 3, a hearing on the cost-benefit analysis, just that part of it.
And if it comes back negative?
It's, whatever, they're going to have to integrate it anyways, whatever, yeah, but it's just public comment.
I'm just concerned that the project, I wrote a letter in support of the project last year, and I'm just concerned that this further delays the project.
Does not delay the project.
Okay.
Because we're not getting, the EIR, EIS is not ready yet. It won't be ready until next year, 2017, perhaps even early of 2018.
So my concern would be then if the cost analysis comes back in some sort of negative way, that would delay the project. When it seems like seems like there's been so much already done on this.
So the problem is that regardless of what the outcome is of the public comment on the cost-benefit analysis, we'll go through the process, and if you don't have public input, and we all know how the public is involved in this process, there will be a lawsuit, which will further delay the project.
Is there a reason why the public hasn't been involved all these years?
No, the public has been involved in the EIR.
Just on this particular part, they have not been involved. Okay, thank you.
Senator, you got an urgency bill here, right? The urgency bill? So, one idea would be to, now that we've fleshed out this thing, we could take this up at any time. We could defer action and ask the 2 parties to get together to see if they can have 3 hearings for the senator and work this out. Is that something you can do?
Yeah,
You want to do that, Senator?
back to our board and talk about it.
If we get a commitment from Metro to meet with us on this particular issue, I'm happy to.
All right, there we go.
I'm
I
happy.
think we fleshed it out. Now we got to, you want to request bring these people together and try to come up with a process with 3 hearings and then,
Up to 3 hearings, we're happy.
okay, up to 3 hearings, she says. She's being reasonable. Is that something you can do? Sit down with her? Mr. Mayor?
Yes, of course we
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, not mayor, not.
No, I'm talking to
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, absolutely, we could.
It seems like, having gone through this before myself, okay? I'll just say this. I built a 14-mile freeway, okay? And some people accuse me of being the George Patton of freeway construction. I'm sorry, but that's true, okay? So I was not tolerating any delays in the process, in the schedule. And I did get accused of that, I'll say that. But at the same time, we had 300 hearings on the project. And we learned a lot, we got input, we got perspective. And then when we built the freeway, we built it to the specification that we received input from the 300 hearings. And people are very satisfied with the project right now. They felt that they were listened to. Some people didn't want it at all, but generally it was well supported in our community. So I think sometimes working these things out and mediating these things is a good idea when you want to complete a project on time and on budget. This project, they said, would take 17 years. We built in 9.5 years. We finished the project under budget, under the timeline. So I think, and it was through some communities that originally they wanted to have a 2-lane road go through their community. That was the original plan that some of the cities set. So it seems like a very similar kind of situation here where we have to sit down and.
This is only 4.2 miles, I think.
Yeah, you're only, well, you gotta, yeah. It might be easier than what I dealt with.
Might be easier.
But I think having these kinds of get-togethers to work out a hearing would be good. So Senator, would you be willing to put this off in time for you to have some meetings? You're at urgency.
Be glad to do that.
Is that acceptable to our committee? Yes. You like that? Is everybody happy with that? Okay, we will do that. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, members.
I will be of assistance at any point on that, Senator, that you need my assistance on. Members, we'll go to Senator Wesso. Senator Wesso's here with his resolution. Senator, you have the floor. This is SJR 22.